Hi class, in these videos we're going to look at Excel Module 11. And Module 11 we're using some programming and some Visual Basic for applications development to extend the basic capabilities of Excel. We're going to be working on this global pharmaceutical company project, and you can see based on this first display that we have our spreadsheet sort of set up as a form so that it's data entry type information. And we'll use this to record prospects. And those are people that we think might be interested in buying from us, that um, becoming customers. We're going to be using some ActiveX controls, which are buttons that we're used to using in our Windows applications to click on. And then we'll be using some form controls like radio buttons and checkbox to record additional information to make it easy for the user to enter data about these prospects. Next, we're going to have a sales analysis page. And in our sales analysis page, we'll be looking at different countries of manufacture and product we have, and lots of information that's been entered by many different people. So it's a shared spreadsheet that's been used in many places. We'll merge that information together so it's usable. Now we're also going to have an event expenses sheet, and this is going to be tracking expense event. And then we also are going to have the ability to track our event attendance in prior years. We can see what was. Now you're going to be creating Visual Basic applications code to add functionality to the command buttons that we're going to add to the first worksheet. And of course, this is quite involved, a lot to do. So what we would do if we were working on this and we're given this project specifications, we begin by designing the user interface, record our user input to another location using the user interface data. We would write our Visual Basic for Applications code and test our user interface, share the workbook and collaborate, use comments for reviews, and track changes. Workbook, so a lot to do. Now let's get started. The first file is GPC sales from the data file. I'm going to make and tools. And I want GPC sales. Here is it. Now when I download this one, I think I'm going to create a folder for all of this information. Put it in my CIS201 folder. So my 19. This is going to be Excel 11. Got so many different files. Now I'm looking to see if we have specific information about how to save it, and we do. Now we're going to name this GPC Sales Analysis. But we also want to change the type of file. So instead of just a worksheet, we want to save this as an XLSM file. So GPC Sales Analysis.xlsm. Save that. Now open it. Well, it's mad at me already. Let's save this as And open that. And then I want to do a file, save as, and let's change that. Name and our data type. Now we should see that Excel an Excel macro enabled workbook. And a macro is like a saved series of keystrokes. So if we have 57 steps to save a file, we can save those 57 steps as a macro. Yes, I'm going to place. So that's what a macro is, saved procedure. Now, in your ebook, they have some great videos about setting up the developer tab and inserting a button into a worksheet, inserting a checkbox in a group box, command buttons, and how to do a lot of different things with your form controls. We're going to struggle through here first. We'll watch these videos and be in much better shape than watching me. The first thing we want to do is display the developer tools. To create Visual Basic for application-enabled applications, we need to allow developer tools. So I'm going to go to my Backstations settings, and I do Advanced. Maybe I want Customize Ribbon. There it is. So don't go to Advanced, go to Customize Ribbon, and over here on the side, you should see the developer tools. We want to check those. Notice that you could add just certain pieces, but we want all the developer tools. So check those and click OK. Now, as soon as I do that, I should see the developer toolbar up here, tools menu, ready to go. So let's add some form control to our worksheet here to make it user-friendly. We're looking at our prospect recorder worksheet here, and this is the one we want to add some things to. So whenever we look at our developer tools, we see that we have code, a code block, we have add-ins, controls, and XML. So our form controls are what we're going to be concerned with here. So we'll be using the insert command, and we can insert different things that are form type of things. And by form controls, we mean buttons and checkboxes and things that we're used to using on Windows, forms outside of Excel, and we can make Excel a little friendlier. Now let's look at the option button in the form controls area. Very first button, and I'm going to click that. What does it want? Column 6, row 1 in the control gallery. We have different controls. So it says it wants form controls, and I want this button. So I'm going to drag this button to cell C9. Running. There's my button, but I don't know how I got it there. Let's try it again. I'm going to press delete to get rid of it. And I've got my current cell position set as C9. I'm going to use insert, and I want this button. Now, I didn't really do anything, but if I click over here, it asks me if I want to assign a macro, and I don't. So I'll click OK. Now there's my button. All right, now this is not the one I want. We want a radio button type control, not a button. So let's go back to our insert. And our radio button control is going to be option. Now I want to put one. And I want this option button. It looks pretty good. I want another one, and right here. So I'm going to click on my option and click there where I start. And then I want a third one a little bit further over. Now, each of these option buttons, if you notice, separate controls, and I can click on them and I can use the mouse. So if I click and hold, move that around, just like clip art in Word, I can expand it. We'll look at some other things that we can do with it. But for now, let's add a few more option buttons. We want some coming down this row here. So insert here, here, 6. I'm going to put Control Z on that one because it went kind of weird. Use my option button. And remember, Control Z is always available. That's the undo command, and it really, really helps when you're working with things like this. Things can go awry suddenly. All right, so we have some option buttons placed here. Now we want to do some checkboxes. Checkboxes are going to go across the bottom here. So let's insert. Here's a check. Here. One. Good. Oh, one more. All right, so now we have some radio buttons and some checkboxes. And of course, we can move them around, resize them, whatever we want to do. We could also copy and paste each individual item. So I could copy checkbox 31 and paste it. We'll see soon that we can edit the text and change those descriptions. So lots of different things we can do with our controls. Now, whenever we're working with radio buttons, you know as a user, if you're working with the radio buttons that have the round icon, you usually are only allowed to choose one voice. And in order to enforce that, we need to group our radio buttons so that Excel knows which radio buttons are a group. So let's do that. I want to go to my insert. I want to find the group box button, the group box. Select it, click, and hold my mouse button down and drag across all these items, and then release my mouse button so that they're all selected. Now we have all of our option buttons and controls added to our form. They don't mean a lot, right? So sometimes we might want to use some label controls, and labels just help us to identify what's going on in our form. It's an important part of our user interface. Our user interface is the part of the system that our user will work with. So let's create a label. Let's go to cell I14. And in I14, we're going to put an ActiveX label. So far, we've been using the form controls. For this one, we're going to use an ActiveX control. Now the label will be this letter A, because it indicates it's text. And I'm going to select that. And I want to kind of use the selection area of this cell as a guide to click and draw my label. There we go. We've got its boundaries set based on that cell size. Now our ActiveX controls allow us to do a little bit of different application development than with our forms control. Now we're actually going to put in a command button, and buttons really give us a lot of programming control. We can accomplish much more complex actions than what we could do with Excel alone. Now for our command buttons, we would like these to be ActiveX controls. So I'm going to insert an ActiveX control and a button here. And they say they would like this button to go from I7 and to the lower right of J9. That's a big old button. Means I need to move this. Come on. There. Okay. Inserting that button used some resources, huh? Because the computer was definitely not responding appropriate. But it's back. Okay, next thing I want to do, put in another command button. And this one is going to go, from about I22 down to the bottom. Command button. 22. Now let's save. Quick, because we have big changes here. And now we want to set some properties of each of these form controls. And what is a property? Well, a property is just some specific information that has to do with the individual form control. So if I looked at you as a student, you have several properties like your name, your grade, your attendance. Those properties exist for every student, but each of you has specific data values for those properties. And that's exactly how things work when we're working with Excel and our developer tools. Each of these option buttons are option buttons, and each option button has properties, but we can set those properties, individual values, individual settings for our different buttons. So first of all, let's change our option buttons. And we want to, first of all, do this button. Now, there's lots of ways we can go about doing this. Come on, you silly thing. I got to click somewhere. I right-clicked on it, and that will work. I can choose Edit Text, and that lets me change the caption. And for this, we want this option button to say email. Now for the next option button, I right click on it. I want to edit. And notice how only showing inside the option button text area. And I want to change this text to say US mail. And finally, third one is going to say telephone. Okay. Now, we want to resize these controls so that it just encloses the new text. Let's make sure everything looks good, kind of the way they want it. Select this one. Right clicking seems to work best. And grab, resize it. Same thing with my email. It up a little bit. And then for my phone, I think that's pretty good. Now, they'd like us to move this telephone control. So they say, hold down the Alt key and drag this edge over to the edge H. Why did they want you to hold the Alt key? The Alt key aligns controls to the grid. So let's do that again. I'll hold Alt and I'll move this beginning location. You let it snap to that grid spot. And they would like that telephone to be that far over. I believe we're in the right positions now. So using that Alt key does make it easier to align things. We have some other tools that we can use though. So let's select all of these radio controls. It's giving me a hard time in selecting them. Whoops. Control Z. And I'm going to hold my control key and select the other two. So now that I have all three of them selected, I want to use the drawing tools. Let's see. Display the drawing tools format. We have shape format, instead of drawing tools. So we're just a little different. And then let's look for drawing tools formats. Okay. Two. And then let's find our Align Objects button right here. And in our Align Objects, do that drop down. And how would we like to align them? Let's align their bottoms. Oh, that moved that one a little bit, didn't it? Now remember to select multiple controls like that. We had to select the first one and then hold the control key down to select our other controls. We have to release that mouse button in between. Now we should have everything set there for the align bottom. Let's align our objects again. And this time, let's distribute horizontally. Space the three controls evenly. There, that's better, isn't it? Because it was kind of annoying. Then let's click somewhere to deselect those things and select our email. Now, they mentioned that you could make your controls more visible by selecting them and changing borders and fill colors to make them stand out from the background. And you can make your controls a specific size. So lots of wonderful formatting things to do. Now, let's edit our other 6 controls. Sorry, I'm just clicking away. I double clicked and it opened it up to let me change the text. So I'm going to do that this way. And I'm going to see if I can zoom in on this book a little bit to read what it's saying. The first one should say trade show event. Next. The next one should say something that I just cannot read at all. I'm zooming in more. Social media. Next one. I'm just trying to select all that text there. Is billboard or something, I don't know. Might have to change it if I can see it later. And then billboard or what it is. We have newspaper ad. It's letting me click on these and it's opening up the text for me to change the text. So I'm just trying to select the text in each one. This one says word of mouth. Leave that extra in there. Finally, lastly, we have other. Now you can tell I'm not too worried about lining things up. I know we're going to do some alignment with all of these as we go. They say move the top option button so that its upper left corner out here aligns with the upper left corner of cell B12, and then move the bottom option button so that its lower left corner aligns with the lower left of B20. Okay, so I'm going to try to move this one, B12. We want it. How's that? Now we can select all 6 of these, and I have one selected. So I'm going to select the others using my control key. And now I'm going to go to my shape format menu, and I want to set the control height 0.2 and the width to 1.1. I'm going to type in that first number. There we go. Now we want to align those objects. Oops, got them deselected. Now my shape format menu is available. I'm going to go to align. I want to align left, and then I want to distribute vertically. Perfect. Now I want to make cell A10 my current cell. I just basically want to select someplace else so that I can see what I'm doing. And then click to select the trade show event. So they want this one to be on, and for some reason we have both of them on. We shall see if we get that fixed in a minute. Now, before we do that, or if we miss it, let's do our checkboxes. For our checkboxes, this first checkbox, text here, behave differently outside of the group box, will be anti-inflammatory, and next one, antihistamine, and antihypertensive, and lastly, antithyroid. Okay, so we've got them all renamed. Now let's get our positioning right so that we can align them. We want the leftmost box to align with the upper left corner of B23. And then we want the rightmost to align with H23. Go. Now let's select all four. Hold your control key. And let's go to our shape format menu. And let's set our control height 0.2 and our width to 1.2. I did it again, didn't I? Really? Select them all again. Now I want to do the alignment. So I'm going to align our objects, align to the top, and then I want to distribute horizontal. There we go, that spread them out pretty good. Looks great. I'm going to save. Now I'm concerned about our other being checked here. I'm going to delete it, copy this, paste it. And say other. We're still having trouble with it. You'll see. We should only have one of them checked. Something's going to give us some trouble. But the next thing that we want to do is look at our ActiveX controls. Whenever we are looking at a thing like a command button, that type of control usually causes an action. So that's an ActiveX control that will give us some extended action. We can set up our button's appearance and behavior and actions it does using its properties. See those if I click command button here. You can see that if I right click, one of the options that's available to me is properties. Take a look at that. Properties gives a window that lists all of the different properties that have to do with command button, like the height of the button, the leftmost position of the button. Is there a picture on the button? All of these different properties are things that we can use to control our button and make it form specific. Now the first thing we're going to do is format our command button and label controls. So let's select all of them. I'm going to close this properties window, clicking the X, and then I'm going to select my first command button, hold my control key, and select my label, because remember we made it an ActiveX control also, and then select my other command button. Now, once I've got these set, I can click on Shape Format. And we should be able to set our back color. Oh, we need to go to our developer. There's where looking at our developer tab. Let's look at property. So just like when I right-clicked and had the properties option, another way to get to the properties option on the developer tab, I have properties. Now looking at my properties window, notice I can move it around wherever I can, just kind of set it out of the way. But what we want to do here is change our back color. So find your property. Here's our property back color. And then in this next area is where change the value of the property. So let's look at the drop-down list and see what kind of colors we have. In our system colors, we don't really have anything we like. So let's click on the palette tab, and that gives us a much more full color wheel option. Now we're going to get really wild here and choose gray. This gray here and as our back color. Now let's change up our font. Here's our font property. Nothing is set here, but we see the ellipsis, the 3 dots. That means that if we click here, we'll get more info. And here's our font dialog when we click on those ellipses. Let's select a different font. They recommend it is SEGU UI. Now we do need to be concerned about fonts. Remember, we want something that is going to be, what do we say, not true type, because we want it to be something that uses the same amount of space for each letter. When we look at things like Times New Roman and those that are true type font, they can make each letter take up a different amount of space, which looks great in the letter, something, but it makes it hard to line up form type controls. So sometimes we'll use things like this font here to control. Okay, so I want this to be a 10-point font. And I'm going to click OK. Notice that changed my font. Now a couple of other properties that we'd like to change. Let's set our word wrap to true. So if we were to put something in that label that was too long to fit, it would wrap it and we would still be able to see it. And then let's set our shadow properties to true, give it a little bit of a 3D effect. Now let's set our height to 50.25 and our width way down here to 140.25. You see lots of ways for us to change that width and height. Okay, so they look kind of weird. Let's fix them up a little bit. The first one that we want to do, I'm going to click someplace to deselect all of those. I want to select Command Button 1. Now we saw that we could click in the control and change its text, but we can also change its caption property in the properties window. And so I want this caption to say something different. It's going to say Step 1 hyphen, click to enter contact information. And then for label 1, we want its caption to say Step 2 hyphen, use option bullets and check boxes to select answers to questions. And then finally, our third step is going to be Command Button 2. So its caption should say, Step 3, hyphen, click to submit information. So this button is going to take this data and copy it someplace else or save it to the cloud or do something. They're done. Okay, so we can close that properties window now. We have that all set. Let's select all three of these controls using our control key again. And I want to go to the shape format menu and we're going to align them. Let's align right. And then let's distribute vertically. There, that made them nice and even. Now they say, well, we still have these items selected. Let's use our arrow keys to move the controls as a group up just a little bit. So I'm not exactly sure. I just want it over just a teeny bit. So try moving with your arrow keys and notice how you get that absolute control of movement with those selected items. So that's really handy. Okay, let's save that. And let's stop this video here. Pick it up again. Thanks.